on I-95, and as I've said all week, I should probably just get a cot up there. The Ravens taking on the Jets next week. I'm back in New York. My wife's being honored by the DKMS on the 27th in Manhattan for being a leukemia survivor, a bone marrow transplant survivor, so we're excited about that, and I will be in Vegas all week jamming with Mick and the Stones, but we're doing some radio here and picking up some residue off of Sunday's loss because I think at 3-3 now and on a 3-game losing streak, evaluating where this Ravens team is probably a lot about evaluating where the Giants are. Christian Dyer covers all things Giants as well as the Red Bulls up there doing the soccer work up in the Big Apple. You can follow his journey at Christian Dyer. That's Kristian. and Dyer, just like, I guess, Duffy Dyer at that point, and he covers the Giants as well as the Jets for Metro New York. And Christian, I guess we'll see you again this weekend as we get ready for the Jets game. But the Giants in the rearview mirror, I mean, we always wonder, like, what one player can do. You know, we had a pretty special guy around here in 52 in Ray Lewis. I know you guys had Lawrence Taylor among some others. Some would say Eli Manning is special, but I think his brother's more special. But when a wide receiver can take over a game, there's a lot of things that have to go right with the O-line, with passing the ball, with getting open, and then obviously exploiting the Jimmy Smith injury as the Giants did so well in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, without a doubt. This is the Odell Beckham that Giants fans have been waiting for, showing up on Sunday in a big way. 9 catches, 222 yards, and a guy who was coming in averaging 13.3 yards per catch to start the season, career low. You know, this is a perennial Pro Bowl guy we're talking about, and he had been invisible. And we've heard a lot about the temper tantrums and just kind of the immaturity. And now we're kind of seeing the Odell Beckham who just goes out there, plays loose. If someone goes after him, if he gets targeted, if there's a penalty, he's not ranting and raving like we've seen in the past. And I think this was a big game for him against a good Baltimore team. I also thought it was impressive the way the Giants came out about midway through the second quarter, the adjustments they made. Baltimore was getting in the backfield a lot. They certainly made the Giants a one-dimensional team on Sunday, but the Giants were getting the ball quickly out of Eli Manning's hands into space. Victor Cruz, Sterling Shepard, and Odell Beckham all getting the ball out there in space, and that's where they can be most effective. So after going down 10-0, I was basically writing off the Giants that this was going to be yet another loss for them. But Sunday, they bounced back in a big way, showed a little bit of resolve, and with Philadelphia now, a couple losses in the NFC East on the road, Carson Wentz looking a little bit more humble out there, or being humbled out there.
Just looking less like a rookie, let's be honest, right?
Well, yeah, he's
more
looking,
like a rookie, I should say.
Far more like a rookie, yeah. Without a doubt. Now, this is a guy with a bright future, but Bart Scott said a couple weeks ago on CBS Sports Radio, we might have fool's gold with Carson Wentz when he starts playing some of these tougher teams. We saw that a little bit today.
Well, I would say this on the Giants. They can't run the ball. I know they have one special player in Odell Beckham. I didn't see anything on the defensive side of the ball that looked special to me. And the Ravens had 5 Pro Bowlers missing. He lost 2 more, in Suggs and Jimmy Smith before the end of the game. I know we're all sort of licking our wounds here and feeling bad, and I know we went through a whole season of injuries last year, but the injuries start to add up, and I think when you have good coaching and when you have a special player and you exploit that situation where the Ravens had their 5th cornerback on the field running around with probably the best wide receiver in the game.
Yeah, and that's been a matchup problem that up here in New York has been difficult for the Giants. They've had an awful lot of injuries. Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie missing some time. Eli Apple, first-round pick out of Ohio State, a Jersey kid, he missed some time with an injury as well. Their back end has been beat up, and it's all about difference makers in this league. And, when the Ravens are trotting out second, third-tier level guys against Odell Beckham, that's going to be a huge matchup problem. But more than anything, Odell Beckham didn't let the game get to him. It was very obvious that early on there was going to be some physical play, that the Ravens were again going to try to ignite this guy's emotions and fury. And I've been very critical of Odell Beckham this offseason. I thought he spent an awful lot of time with people whose last names are Kardashians, which is a curse in the NFL or the sporting world. He was hanging out with the likes of Drake and everybody else, and you didn't see the guy out there running routes. He was promoting himself. So to see him focused, really just going out there and performing, not letting the distractions get to him, I mean, it's got to carry over from week to week with this guy. And he is an immature human being, but most superstars are.
Yeah, I was going to ask long term for him. Maybe that would have played differently in the Midwest or in a smaller town or whatever. In New York, it feels like it's being embraced like certain political candidates, right? Like that plays big for the. And I noticed it just being at the Giants game, and I'm sure I'll notice it with the Jets. When you're in New York, there's a whole different press contingent. I mean, there always was around the Yankees. There always is around the hockey scene and the Rangers. There's just so many of you in the media corps, and for a guy like him who I've often wondered if Chad Ochocinco had played in a major market instead of Cincinnati, how that would have gone down. This seems like a really perfect match for his marketing ability. I don't know that it's a really perfect match for the Mara family and for McAdoo long term to rein this thing in if the kid isn't going to get more mature. And as you've pointed out, I mean, his habits and his circle have led more to Hollywood than less to Hollywood. And as you know, it's about playing on Sunday, and he played pretty well this Sunday.
He certainly did perform, but like I said a few moments ago, it's a week to week with this guy. And this media market here, for those who aren't familiar with the New York market, you're looking at probably a half a dozen TV stations at every Giants and Jets practice, 8 to 10 newspapers sending multiple writers. So around Odell Beckham, when he speaks at his locker, we're talking 30, 35, 40 people crowding around him. You go to a place like Carolina, who maybe sends 1-2 people on the road to a locker room. That's going to be, there is quite a change. And I think the good news is that he did play in a little bit of a pressure cooker at LSU, so he understands SEC, the attention there, the scrutiny there. But this is a market that really wore down Tim Tebow. I mean, turned Mark Sanchez from the second coming of Joe Namath into somebody now who can't even get a snap as a backup to a rookie quarterback in the NFL. It does wear on you. Now, the Giants pride themselves as an organization, not unlike the Ravens, who have a tremendous media relations staff, and being able to keep a tight grip on things, not letting the pressure get to be too much for their star players. But there's only so much that they can do. And a Giants organization that you mentioned, Lawrence Taylor, a few moments ago, they had Plaxico Burress and got the best out of him. He was a temperamental human being. They've been able to get some of these guys who come in with reputations as being difficult and get the most out of them, maximize them, put them around good people. Very strong alumni network that the Giants have in place, much like the Ravens do, integrating their former players into the team fold and mentorship programs and the like. So, it's really everything is there for Odell Beckham to be successful with the New York Giants despite the success. Now it's got to come down to him. Does he want to sit courtside at basketball games, a night before, 2 nights before a big game? Does he want to be hobnobbing? Does he want to be getting involved in Twitter spats with Josh Norman? Or does he want to be the perennial Pro Bowler who in probably a season and a half is going to rewrite the Giants' passing record books?
He is Christian Dyer. He covers all things Giants as well as the Jets for Metro New York. You can follow him at Christian R. Dyer, D-Y-E-R, out on Twitter as well. What'd you make of the Ravens here and Joe Flacco? We're going to sit around this weekend. I mean, the list of problems we have with the team right now here, from Suggs' injury to 5 Pro Bowlers, and I go through Yanda, you can go through Steve Smith, just right on down the line, Doomerville, penalties, the defensive line not getting really much of a pass rush at all on Eli Manning after the early part of the game. The O-line playing with all second-teamers. Wide receivers not getting separation. And then there was the very, very, and I've pointed this out, generous officiating in the direction of the Ravens on Sunday, which, if you're really asking me down the middle, if I take my purple hat off, I think the officials kept the Ravens in the game and gave the Ravens the best opportunity to win the game on Sunday. And I don't always say that around here. I mean, we come from a long, long history, began with Brian Billick, our WNST partner here, of paranoia in regard to the league screwing us on the officials. There was no hometown cooking up there for Roger Goodell in New York on Sunday. The Ravens won some calls.
Yeah, they certainly did. And from the outside looking in, this Ravens team has a lot of pieces, but you just don't see the depth that we've seen in years past. And some of that comes down to some of the drafting. And we've spoken so highly of how this franchise has drafted over the years, but it seems like, and I liken it to Jerry Reese, the general manager up here in New York, had a couple big drafts, was instrumental for the Giants' first Super Bowl win. Under his tenure, he had 7 draft picks who were on the 2 deep. Half of them were starting as rookies. sometimes your success, you buy into it a little bit too much and you start taking reaches rather than going for the safe picks. And I look at the Ravens drafts from the past couple of years, it's really been hit or miss and not at all like what we've seen. And I give a little bit of a passing grade to Joe Flacco for this one. Brand new offensive coordinator. I know they simplified things, had that big throw in the first quarter, certainly did some good stuff underneath. Seemed a bit more comfortable. You look over 300 yards. That hasn't happened a whole lot this season.
Well, they ran the ball a little bit too. I mean, for the first time, they really kind of ran the ball.
But as someone who has seen Marty Mornhinweg up here as the Jets offensive coordinator, I can only help but wonder, when are we going to see Tim Tebow running the Wildcat out there? It's only a matter of time.
Well, what did you think of Marty Mornhinweg? You were around him with the Jets. I mean, this is going to be a great question all week long because I think most of the people on the Jets beat that I'll chat with had their Marty ball, and certainly up in Philadelphia, there's a long stretch of that. He is a competent offensive coordinator, but so was Mark Trestman. But philosophically, probably very different based on their history.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think the thing that we're going to be seeing with Marty Mornhinweg is getting the ball out of Joe Flacco's hands faster and quicker. When he was here with the Jets, the personnel that he had with Mark Sanchez, his confidence was at an all-time low. The offensive line was terrible, didn't have any difference makers around him. And then Geno Smith, who was just an absolute, I know everyone wanted to talk up his rookie year. This guy was a disaster in the pocket. Joe Flacco is a good presence of mind, certainly has the arm to be able to get the ball down the field. I think that this could be a good combination. I'm not sure if it's going to work this season as well as it could down the road. I think you give him an off season in Marty's system. They expand the playbook. They actually begin running the ball consistently. I think that you might want to do an upgrade there at the guard positions at some point. I know with the injuries, it's been difficult this year, but I think the pieces are there for Marty and Joe Flacco to do really well. The problem is when Marty doesn't have a competent quarterback like he had here in New York. He didn't have one in Mark Sanchez at that point of his career or Geno Smith. Marty begins to stretch things, tries to outthink things, and tries to add too many wrinkles to the playbook. He's not going to have to do that here in Baltimore. To me, Joe Flacco is a top 6 quarterback in the NFL when everything's right. He's been there. He's done that. There's potential for this partnering, but it's going to take a little time.
It is amazing. Like, Eli's got 2 rings, Joe's got 1. There aren't a whole lot of those going around. You know, Brady, Roethlisberger, Breeze, Rodgers. Only a handful of those guys that Russell will have been up that mountain, right? And it doesn't feel like a meeting of legendary Super Bowl MVP quarterbacks. It feels like 2 guys that are spend much of their time being maligned to some degree. And in the case of Flacco, I could say there were some errant passes at the end, and there's always something to complain about when a guy throws the ball 50 times. Not every pass is going to be perfect. I'm a big Joe fan as well as a defender to some degree. And I look at the Ravens this year, and I know it's a built-in excuse on the injury side to say there's only so much you can do when you're under duress and you're playing with second-team linemen and your number 1 receiver. And I know that's a hard thing to accept as a 37-year-old receiver for Steve Smith, that when he goes out, and we saw that last week in Trestman's offense, things change dramatically. But running the football, if you can do that and you have a competent quarterback, and Eli Manning and Joe Flacco, that's what makes them better, that running game. And also, the play action, when you can do more than just sell it, when you can really get away with it, that's what opens things up for the Perrymans and the Wallaces down the field. But it really does start with the running game, and that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with either of these quarterbacks.
No, it doesn't. And I think the one thing that probably we're going to be seeing more from the Ravens, more draw plays. You mentioned it, more play actions. I think there will be more creativity, even if it's in a simplified playbook format. And the one thing you always hear about Mark Trestman is that he has a tendency to overthink things and to try to overcomplicate things. And, Joe Flacco is a cerebral quarterback, but you've got wide receivers who have to understand the route trees, the progressions. There are a lot of wrinkles in what Trestman was trying to do. If the Ravens are able to keep things simple, like you said, run the ball between the tackles, stretch things, get the ball out of Joe Flacco's hands quickly. This is a team that I think is a wild card team and could definitely do some damage in the playoffs. I think the AFC is very open this year outside of the Patriots. So, and we saw Pittsburgh has had some difficulties in recent weeks and very nearly, had a real fight with the Jets a couple weeks ago. The scoreline didn't look like it, but it was a closer game than anticipated. So, give this thing some time. I think Marty Mornhinweg has the potential to be a good partnering with Joe Flacco, but give it a couple weeks, get through that bye week, then I think things could potentially turn around.
Well, and the other part of this is the Bengals just might stink, right? I mean, we have some teams. I mean, look at what happened to Denver, Kansas City, and San Diego's involved. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a bunch of 12-4s in the AFC, and certainly from the Giants division and where they sit at this point, the Cowboys. I mean, I don't know that anyone could have guessed this, and we talked about Carson Wentz maybe being fool's gold, but Dallas certainly feels like they're going to run away with things, and they're going to have their own controversy, and it's going to get a little heavier when Tony Romo comes back.
It will be, and let's bring up the Ravens' opponent next week, the New York Jets. You put them in the NFC East, I think they might win that division. This has been a Jets team that's gone through an awful lot in terms of schedule, the toughest schedule in the league through the first 6-7 weeks of the season. So this is an NFC East that's also there, wide open for the New York Giants to be able to maybe get second, be able to get into the wild card. This is a Giants team, coincidentally, hasn't been to the playoffs since they won the Super Bowl in 2011. So jobs are going to be on the line. There's a first-year head coach. There's a lot of things that can certainly happen, but there's more parity in the NFL this year, I think, than we've seen at any time. And the longer this thing plays out and the Ravens are in it, you look at the elite quarterbacks in this league, and I'm going to say it again, Joe Flacco's up there with the best of the best. I'm biased. I'm a Jersey guy. He's a Jersey guy. He should have gone to Rutgers, but with all that being said...
Maybe Rutgers didn't want him, Maybe he didn't want Rutgers. I mean, Delaware seemed like it did okay with him after Pitt,
Yeah,
right?
Delaware certainly didn't. He ended up at Pitt, and he was a lightly recruited guy, but everyone always sleeps on Joe Flacco. And then come the postseason, Joe Flacco, more often than not for the Ravens, has been a hit rather than a miss.
Well, we need some more hits around here, and certainly not to the infirmary and to the injury report, which we'll be monitoring all week.
Baltimore, yeah.
Christian, we'll see you on Sunday up there. Hey, you're covering soccer, right? I mean, you do Red Bull stuff up there for MSG. They've also got something going on too, right?
Yeah, the Red Bulls are going to be postseason bound. They've got one more game in the regular season. So, and DC United yesterday, emphatic win over New York City FC. They're booking their tickets to the playoffs as well. So it's an exciting time for soccer up and down the East Coast. Not quite as exciting for the football teams in the New York, New Jersey, and Baltimore area.
Yeah, we're going to pick it up here this week. We got the Jets. They're easy. Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll see you on Sunday up there, man.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me on.
Always a pleasure. Christian R. Dyer, D-Y-E-R, out on Twitter as well as at Metro New York and the newspapers there. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day. I'll be out in Vegas all week doing some radio, hanging out on Facebook and Twitter and doing my social media thing. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNST TV channel. If you want to listen live, just download that TuneIn Radio app. It is all brought to you by buyatoyota.com. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And last but never least, breaking news like Terrell Suggs' injury, like the change at OC last week. If the Orioles do anything, you'll get it first on the WNST text service. That is sponsored by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Colatzos will be here from 3 until 5 on Thursday to talk about the Ravens and the Jets and maybe a World Series by the time we get there in Cleveland, the Cubs. Weird baseball times. I've been wearing my Dodger cap around here. I'll continue to do that as well. Hope you're having a great week despite the outcome on Sunday. We'll get back after him and get him on Sunday. No bus trip to the Jets game this week. I've had a couple of email inquiries. Just did not have enough early interest on that. We had a great hearty group of folk who joined us on the Gunther Motor Coach on Sunday for the Giants game. I wish the ride home were a little shorter. I mean, it wasn't a long ride, but it's always a long ride when you lose the game, giving up 200 yards to the best receiver on the planet. We are at WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.